Welcome to the 1,000 Nights and 1 Night. Now, when it was the 537th night, she said, It hath reached me, O auspicious king, that when the Hamel set his load upon the bench to take rest and smell the air, there came out upon him from the court door a pleasant breeze and a delicious fragrance. He sat down on the edge of the bench, and at once heard from within the melodious sound of lutes and other stringed instruments, and mirth-exciting voices singing and reciting together, with the song of birds warbling and glorifying Almighty Allah, in various tunes and tongues, turtles, mockingbirds, maries, nightingales, cusharts, and stone curlews, whereat he marvelled in himself, and was moved to mighty joy and solace. Then he came and went up to the gate, and saw within a great flower garden, wherein were pages and black slaves, and such a train of servants and attendants, and so forth, as is found only with kings and sultans. And his nostrils were greeted with the savory odors of all manner of meats, rich and delicate, and delicious and generous wines. So he raised his eyes heavenwards and said, Glory to thee, O Lord, O Creator and Provider, who providest whoso thou wilt without count or stint. O mine Holy One, I cry thee pardon for all sins, and turn to thee repenting of all offences. O Lord, there is no gainsaying thee in thine ordinance and thy dominion, neither wilt thou be questioned of that what thou doest, for thou indeed over all things art almighty. Extolled be thy perfection. Whom thou wilt thou makest poor, and whom thou wilt thou makest rich. Whom thou wilt thou exaltest, and whom thou wilt thou abasest, and there is no God but thou. How mighty is thy majesty, and how enduring thy dominion, and how excellent thy government. Verily, thou favorest whom thou wilt of thy servants, whereby the owner of this place abideth in all joyance of life, and delighteth himself with pleasant scents and delicious meats, and exquisite wines of all kinds. For indeed thou appointest unto thy creatures what thou wilt, and that which thou hast foreordained unto them. Wherefore are thou some weary, and others are at rest, and some enjoy fair fortune and affluence, while others suffer the extreme of travail and misery, even as I do. And he fell to reciting, How many by my labors that evermore endure, all goods of life enjoy, and in cooly shade recline. Each morn that dawns I wake in travail, and in woe, and strange is my condition, and my burden gares me pine. Many others are in luck, and from miseries are fine, and fortune never leads them with loads the like of mine. They live their happy days in all solace and delight, eat, drink, and dwell in honor mid the noble and the dine. All living things were made of a little drop of sperm. Thine origin is mine, and my preference is thine. Yet the difference and distance twixt the twain of us all are far as the difference of savour twixt vinegar and wine. But at thee, O God all-wise, I venture not to rail, whose ordinance is just, and whose justice cannot fail. When Sinbad the porter had made an end of reciting his verses, he bore up his burden, and was about to fare on, when there came forth to him from the gate a little foot-page, fair of face, and shapely of shape, and dainty of dress, who caught him by the hand, saying, Come in, and speak with my lord, for he calleth to thee. The porter would have excused himself to the page, but the lad would not take a refusal. So he left his load with the doorkeeper and the vestibule, and followed the boy into the house, where he found it to be a goodly mansion, radiant and full of majesty, till he brought him to a grand sitting room, wherein he saw a company of nobles and great lords seated at tables, garnished with all manner of flowers and sweet-scented herbs, besides great plenty of dainty viands and fruits, dried and fresh, and confections and wines and the choicest vintages. There also were instruments of music and mirth, and lovely slave girls playing and singing. All the company was ranged according to rank, and in the highest place sat a man of worshipful and noble aspect, whose beard-sides hoariness had stricken, and he was stately of stature, and fair of favour, agreeable of aspect, and full of gravity and dignity and majesty, So Sinbad the porter was confounded at that which he beheld, and said to himself, By Allah, this must be either a piece of paradise or some king's palace. Then he saluted the company with much respect, praying for their prosperity, and kissing the ground before them, and stood with his head bowed down in a humble attitude. And Shahrazad perceived the dawn of the day, and ceased to say her permitted say. Now, when it was the 538th night, she said, It hath reached me, O auspicious king, that Sinbad the porter, after kissing the ground between their hands, stood with his head bowed down in a humble attitude. The master of the house bade him draw near, and he seated and bespoke him kindly, bidding him welcome. Then he set before him various kinds of viands, rich and delicate and delicious, and the porter, after saying his bismillah, fell to and ate his fill, after which he exclaimed, Praise be Allah, whatso be our case, and washing his hands, returned thanks to the company for his entertainment. Quoth the host, Thou art welcome, and thy day is a blessed. But what is thy name and calling? Quoth the other, O my lord, my name is Sinbad the Hamel, and I carry folks' goods on my head for hire. The host master smiled and rejoined, Know, O porter, that thy name is even as mine, for I am Sinbad the Seaman. And now, O porter, I would have thee let me hear the couplets thou recitest at the gate anon. The porter was abashed, and replied, Allah upon thee! Excuse me for toil and travail and lack of luck. When the hand is empty, teach a man ill manners and boorish ways. Said the host, Be not ashamed, thou art become my brother, but repeat to me the verses, for they pleased me whenas I heard them recite them at the gate. Hereupon the porter repeated the couplets, and they delighted the merchant who was with him. Know, O Hamel, that my story is a wonderful one, and thou shalt hear all that befell me, and all I underwent, ere I rose to the state of prosperity, and became the lord of this place, whereof thou seest me. For I came not to this high estate save after travail sore, and perils galore, and how much toil and trouble have I not suffered in days of yore. I have made 7 voyages, by each which hangeth a marvellous tale, such as confoundeth the reason, and all this came to pass by doom of fortune and fate, for from what destiny doth write there is neither refuge nor flight. Know then, good my lords, continued he, that I am about to relate the first voyage of Sinbad hight the Seaman. My father was a merchant, one of the notables of my native place, a moneyed man and ample of means, who died whilst I was yet a child, leaving me much wealth in money and lands and farmhouses. When I grew up, I laid hands on the whole, and ate of the best, and drank freely, and wore rich clothes, and lived lavish, companioning and consorting with youths of my own age, and considering that this course of life would continue forever, and came no change. Thus did I for a long time, but at last I awoke from my needlessness, and returning to my senses, I found my wealth had become unwealth, and my condition ill-conditioned, and all I once had left my hand. And recovering my reason, I was stricken with dismay and confusion, and bethought me of a saying of our Lord Solomon, son of David, on whom be peace, which I had heard aforetime from my father. 3 things are better than other 3. The day of death is better than the day of birth. A live dog is better than a dead lion, and the grave is better than want. Then I got together my remains of estates and properties, and sold all, even my clothes, for 3,000 dirhams, which I resolved to travel to foreign parts, remembering the saying of the poet, By means of toil man shall scale the height. Who to fame aspires must sleep o' night. Who seeketh pearl in the deep must dive, winning weal and wealth by his main and might. And who seeketh fame without toil and strife, the impossible seeketh the wasteth life. So taking heart, I brought me goods, merchandise, and all needed for a voyage, and impatient to be at sea, I embarked with a company of merchants on board a ship bound for Basra. There we again embarked and sailed many days and nights, and we passed from isle to isle and sea to sea and shore to shore, buying and selling and bartering everywhere. And we continued on our course till we came to an island, as it were a garth of the Garden of Paradise. Here the captain cast anchor, and making fast to the shore, putting out the landing planks. So all on board landed and made furnaces and lighting fires therein, busied themselves in various ways, some cooking, some washing, whilst others some walked about the island for solace. And the crew fell to eating and drinking and playing and sporting. I was one of the walkers, but as we were thus engaged, behold, the master, who was standing on the gunwale, cried out to us at the top of his voice, saying, "Ho there! Passengers, run for your lives, and hasten back to the ship, and leave your gear, and save yourselves from the destruction. Allah preserve you. For this island whereon we stand is no true island, but a great fish stationary amiddlemost of the sea, whereon the sand hath settled, and trees have sprung up of old time, so that it becomes like unto an island. But when ye lighted fires on it, it felt the heat and moved. In a moment it will sink with you into the sea, and you will all be drowned. So leave your gear and seek your safety ere ye die." And Scheherazade perceived the dawn of the day, and ceased to say her permitted say. Now, when it was the 539th night, she said, "It hath reached me, O auspicious king, that when the shipmaster cried to the passengers, 'Leave your gear and seek safety ere ye die,' all who heard him left gear and goods, clothes washed and unwashed, cooking pots, and fled back to the ship for their lives. And some reached it, while others, amongst whom I was, did not. For suddenly the island shook and sank into the abysses of the deep, with all that were therein, and the dashing sea surged over it with clashing waves. I sank with the others, down, down, down into the depths. But Almighty Allah, He preserved me from drowning, and threw in my way a great wooden tub of those that had served the ship's company for tabbing. I gripped it for the sweetness of life, and bestriding it like riding, paddled with my feet like oars, whilst the waves tossed over me, as it were sport, right and left. Meanwhile the captain made sail, and departed with those who had reached the ship, regardless of the drowning and the drowned. And I ceased not following the vessel with my eyes, till she had hid from sight, and I made sure of death. Darkness closed in upon me while in this plight, and the winds and the waves bore me on all that night and all the next day, till the tub brought to me under the lee of a lofty island, with trees overhanging the tide. I caught hold of a branch, and by it clambered up onto the land, after coming nigh upon death. And when I reached the shore, I found my legs cramped and numb, and my feet bore traces of the nibblings of fish upon their soles. Withal I had felt nothing for excess of anguish and fatigue. I threw myself down on the island ground like a dead man, and drowned in desolation, swooned away. Nor did I return to my senses till the next morning, when the sun rose and revived me. But I found my feet swollen, so made shift to move by shuffling on my breech and crawling on my knees, for in that island were found stores of fruits and springs of sweet water. I ate of the fruits, which strengthened me, and thus I abode days and nights, till my life seemed to return, and my spirits began to revive, and I was better able to move about. So after due consideration I fell to exploring the island, and diverting myself with gazing upon all the things that Allah Almighty had created there, and rested under the trees, from one of which I cut me a staff to lean upon. One day, as I walked along the marge, I caught sight of some object in the distance, and thought it was a wild beast, or one of the monstrous creatures of the sea. But as I drew near it, looking hard the while, I saw that it was a noble mare, tethered on the beach. Presently I went up to her, but she cried out against me with great cries, so that I trembled for fear and turned to go away, when there came forth a man from under the earth, and followed me, crying out, saying, "Who and whence art thou, and what caused thee to come hither?" "O my lord," answered I am in very sooth a waif, a stranger, and I was left to drown with sundry others by a ship we voyaged in, but Allah graciously sent me a wooden tub. So I saved myself thereon, and it floated with me till its wave cast me on this island." When he heard this, he took my hand, and saying, "Come with me, carried me into a great sardab, or underground chamber, which was spacious as a saloon. He made me sit down at its upper end, and then he brought me somewhat of food, and being an hungered, I ate till I was satisfied and refreshed. And when he had put me at mine ease, he questioned me of myself, and I told him all that had befallen me from first to last. And as he wondered at my adventure, I said, By Allah, O my lord, excuse me. I have told thee the truth of my case and the accidents which betided me, and now I desire that thou tell me somewhat of thee, and why thou abidest here under the earth, and why thou hast tethered yonder mare on the brink of the sea. Answered he, Know that I am one of the several who are stationed in different parts of this island, and we are of the grooms of the king Moran, and under his hand are all these horses. Every month about new moon tide, we bring hither our best mares, which have never been covered, and picketed them on the seashore, and hide ourselves in this place under the ground, so that none may espy us. Presently the stallions of the sea scent the mares, and come up out of the water, and seeing no one, leap the mares, and do their will of them. When they have covered them, they try to drag them away with them, but cannot by reason of the leg ropes. So they cry out at them, and butt at them, and kick them, which we are hearing. Know that the stallions have dismounted, so we run and cut and shout at them, whereupon they are startled, and return to fear to the sea. Then the mares conceive by them, and bear colts and fillies, worth a mint of money, none in their like to be found on earth's face. This is the time of the coming forth of the sea stallions, and Inshallah I will bear thee to King Moran. And Shahrazad perceived the dawn of the day, and ceased to say her permitted say. Now, when it was the 440th night, she continued, It hath reached me, O auspicious king, that the Sais, and to Sinbad the Seaman, I will bear thee to King Moran, and show thee our country. And know that thou hast not happened on us, thou hast perished miserably, and none that known of thee, but I will be the means of the saving of thy life, and of the return to thine own hand. I called down blessings on him, and thanked him for his kindness and courtesy. And while we were yet talking, behold, the stallion came up out of the sea, and giving a great cry, sprang upon the mare, and covered her. When he had done his will of her, he dismounted, and would have carried her away with him, but could not by reason of the tether. She kicked and cried at him, whereupon the groom took a sword and target, and ran out of the underground saloon, smiting the buckler with the blade, and calling to his company, who came up shouting and brandishing spears. And the stallion took fright at them, and plunging into the sea, like a buffalo, disappeared under the waves. After this, we sat a while till the rest of the grooms came up, each leading a mare, and seeing me with their fellow Sais, questioned me of my case, and I repeated my story to them. Thereupon they drew near me, and spreading the table, ate and invited me to eat. So I ate with them, after which they took horse, and mounting me on one of the mares, set out with me, and fared on without ceasing, till we came to the capital city of King Moran, and going in to him, acquainted him with my story. Then he sent for me, and when they set me before him, and salams had been exchanged, he gave me a cordial welcome, and wishing me long life, bade me to tell him my tale. So I related to him all that I had seen, and all that had befallen me from first to last. Whereat he marveled, and said to me, By Allah, O my son, thou hast indeed been miraculously preserved. Were not the term of my life a long one, thou hast not escaped from these straits. But praised be Allah for safety. Then he spoke cheerily to me, and entreated me with kindness and consideration. Moreover, he made me his agent for the port, and register of all ships that entered the harbor. I attended him regularly to receive his commandments, and he favored me, and did me all manner of kindness, and invested me with costly and splendid robes. Indeed, I was high in credit with him, as an intercessor for the folk, and an intermediary between them and him, when they wanted aught of him. I abode thus a great while, and as often as I passed through the city to the port, I questioned the merchants and travellers and sailors of the city of Baghdad, so happily I might hear an occasion return to my native land. but could not find none that knew of it, or knew any who resorted thither. At this I was chagrined, for I was weary of long strangerhood, and my disappointment endured for a time, till one day, going into King Mahran, I found with him a company of Indians. I saluted them, and they returned my salam, and politely welcomed me, and asked me of my country. And Shahrazad perceived the dawn of the day, and ceased to say her permitted say. And so do I cease my telling of these tales, until it be morrow.